Welcome to the Envelopes Emmy Contender Series. I'm Glenn Whipp, and today we're
Wait, I'm a contender?
Yes.
Really?
I think.
I won?
I think it says it
won?
up there on the
Where's the camera?
On the camera, on my teleprompter. Well, you're a contender for
We're all contenders, actually, in a way.
at this point. It's like spring training baseball. Everybody
Yeah.
could go to the World Series. We're full of hope
Yeah,
right now.
Exactly. That's how I am.
Every day.
I'm full of hope.
Yeah, until you look at your phone and the alerts that come on it. Judd Apatow, ladies and
You ruined
gentlemen.
everything. You ruined everything.
Yeah. Well, mainly, let's start with Zen Diaries,
Yes.
Garry Shandling, which we had a reader, one of our readers ask, you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
How long, let's see, Rant Dog, this is
Yes.
one of your followers, I assume.
All their
Rant
names start
dog.
with rant. Because they know that's what I do.
He wants to know how long you spent on this, because it's nearly 4.5 hours.
Yes.
And there's a lot to sift through.
Well, I started making these short documentaries that are about 5 minutes each for his memorial service. We had a big memorial service at the Wilshire Ebell Theater, and about 1,000 people came, and it was very moving. And about every 25 minutes, they showed a video package I put together. And I took the opportunity to get as much of the footage from his career at that moment, because I thought people will be nice right now. People are usually not nice, but you could say,
At a memorial, you hope.
we're all sad, will you send us this footage? And they did. And then I thought, oh my God, we have the footage now. This feels like a documentary. I feel like I could extend this and make a documentary out of it. So we spent the next year looking for footage, and then a year editing with our great editor, Joe Beshenkowski.
And the title is Zen Diaries.
Yes.
And such a key element of this is his journals.
Yes.
Was that, I think it was mentioned toward the end of the doc, that there was a documentary in the works about his journals. Is that how the journals came? Is that true?
Well, Garry would flirt with the idea of doing certain projects. So people would come to him and say, hey, I'd like to do a documentary about your life and career. And he would say, well, let's go out to lunch. Let's talk about it. And sometimes he would let people shoot some test footage. And he hadn't committed fully to any project. There was one project with our friend Alex that he considered letting him do about the basketball game that he had at his house every weekend and what that meant to Garry. And then another gentleman started a project which would be based on Garry's journals. And I think they even thought about recreating moments from his life. It was the earliest stage, and so they just spent a few hours goofing around to get a sense of it.
That early shot in the doc with him just like unloading all the journals
Exactly.
out of his drawer.
Yes.
There were a lot of journals.
It was 30 years of journals. So I don't know what would have come of that, because a lot of times Garry would bail and say, there's nothing there. Or maybe he would have done something. It's impossible to know. But I did take it as a form of approval that Garry was interested in sharing his journals with people. And so that's why it's the base of this documentary.
He was interested in sharing. He was interested in examining and looking. I mean, the thing that comes clear from watching this is that Larry Sanders was his way of, as many people say in the doc, working through narcissism and ego and vanity. And you expertly chose some clips and behind the scenes stuff to illustrate that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what was funny about Garry was he was always very vocal about the fact that he wasn't Larry Sanders. So he would say Larry Sanders couldn't make the Larry Sanders show because he wouldn't have the ability to see himself clearly. So Larry Sanders doesn't have that perspective that Garry has about ego and show business, and that's why Garry wants to make the Larry Sanders show. At the same time, it's very personal, and Gary's putting all these details from his life and his feelings in it. But at other times, Garry thought he was observing everyone else who hosts talk shows. So it's hard to know what was a rationalization. In Gary's mind, of course, he knew that he was digging deep in himself, but I think he was able to do that because he would trick himself into thinking, oh, it's about Johnny or Dave or Jay or Conan.
Yeah. Did you, who went through the 30 years of journals?
I went through
When you say 30 years, I mean, how
many journals is that? I mean, sometimes it would be one journal that would cover a year and a half or 2 years and didn't have a lot in it. Then he would go through a period where he would write a lot. So it was all over the place, a lot of half-finished journals. The most fun was reading the journals from 78 till about 83, because it was when he was figuring out how to do stand-up, and he would write about his sets and you know, who he saw at the Comedy Store. So you really got a sense of what comedy was like in LA in the late 70s. And it was fun to read Garry writing when he wasn't funny and he was really struggling to figure out, you know, how do you deal with a heckler? And he would write about it, like, how do you deal with a heckler? I think the key is to, you know, not let them take over the show and include them in what you're trying to say. And he was, you know, working through his personal rules of comedy in his journal. A lot of his journals also, you know, about how to, you know, be yourself. It always came back to, how can I be more Garry? And he wrote a lot about stage fright in the early years of the journals, that he thought the way to not be afraid on stage was to realize that his goal is to be Garry. And even when he's nervous, he still is Garry, so why be nervous? Because he's achieved his goal. And there was a lot of, you know, Buddhist-inspired comedy thought like that.
I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around that, but it's true. And you know, there's one thing where he says, one day I'm going to host the Tonight Show.
Yes.
That was like, wow.
He certainly, you could say he invented the secret.
Yeah.
I mean, he was trying to, you know, figure out his goal and manifest it by, you know, working hard, making it, you know, the center of his journals and his thoughts, and you know, preparing, because he would write about how scary it was to sit next to Johnny Carson. How am I going to do that? How am I going to be as funny as I need to be, you know, in that moment when I have to do it? And he would write, you know, if you relax and you trust yourself, the humor will just come. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, that's like Roger Federer saying, at some point, if you stop thinking, you will hit your overhead smash correctly if you've prepared.
Yeah, you see that first Tonight Show appearance, and it's thrilling.
Yeah.
I mean, because he just kills.
And it's thrilling because he's having fun.
Yeah.
He's very present. You don't feel the stakes. Because, you know, when you would go on the Tonight Show back then, if you bombed, a big you know, avenue for your career was closed to you.
Right.
So there was a lot of pressure, you know, not just to kill, but to not do badly. And it was a magical type of set.
Now, you were working on this, so he died 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The memorial was April 2016. Around that time, I mean, you had been doing some stand-up before.
Yes.
When you made Trainwreck, I think.
Funny People.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I started doing stand-up while we shot Trainwreck.
Right.
For real. Yeah.
So, but then you kind of really got into it.
Yes.
How much did making this documentary influence what you were writing for your stand-up?
I think that the effect it had was I was thinking a lot about Garry and his approach to his work, and just going deep in his head was like relearning all of the lessons he ever taught me. And, you know, his main thing was about truth and getting to the core of who you are. And he said to me once, Judd, you're only doing it wrong when you look like you're trying to be a comedian. And that was magical advice for me, because it's so easy to go into your rhythms.
Yeah.
You could just start doing everyone that you admire. And the hardest part is to find yourself. So I think it helped my stand-up a lot when I was doing The Return, because I heard Garry's voice.
Yeah. I mean, that was, you know, you came up with him. I mean, he was your mentor.
Yes.
And you see in this documentary just how, I mean, I think someone said to interact with him, you had to go to a place that's a little raw. And for you, as a producer and writer-director, or I guess as a producer, though, your most common note to people is dig deep.
Yes, I think so.
So there's like a through line from what you learned with Garry to what you now practice as a producer.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that shows in all the work we do. When I met Lena Dunham, that's how she was approaching her writing with Tiny Furniture, the movie she made. That made me want to collaborate with her is that it was so honest and truthful, and she dug so deep. And I think we try to do that on Crashing with Pete Holmes, and the episode that we have put up for most of the Emmy stuff is the one that stars Artie Lang, and it's a perfect example of Garry's theory, which is Pete and I went to Artie Lang and we said, you have these struggles with addiction, and we know how hard it is, and we love you and support you in this because that's what matters more than anything, that he defeats this. But we do have an opportunity for you to share what this struggle is with people in an episode, and to say to people, you don't want to be in the position I've found myself in, and that it is a gift to people to share your life, and it helps people, and it changes lives. I really believe that people will watch that episode, and some people will have that moment where, am I going to try this? Am I going to do this? And there will be some people, maybe it's 4, and that would be enough, who just go, man, I saw that episode, that seems like a nightmare. And I think that was the core of Garry's approach to comedy, that in some way it is a giving act to people. And that was in his journals. He says, what is your comedy for? It's a gift you give people to help them through this very difficult life. I probably misquoted it there.
Yeah.
But basically that's what he said, and I think that that's the thing I've taken from him more than anything else.
And that you wouldn't be a director probably without Garry, because he kind of gave you that push, that nudge to direct an episode of Larry Sanders.
It was like a mama bird pushing you off the branch, because I had wanted to direct quietly. I wasn't able to, find myself in the place where someone was giving me the opportunity, and I was scared. I just had an irrational fear that nothing would come out right or look right.
Sure.
And then one day, Garry just walked in my office and said, "You're doing the next one." Which, when I look back, was remarkable, because he didn't ask any other writers or producers on the show to direct the show. And there were an enormous amount of people who deserved that and went on to do it elsewhere. So it was a big deal for Garry to give the reins of an episode to somebody. He was very hesitant to do that. Todd Holland, who directed almost half of the show, that was his go-to, that he knew was going to crush every episode. Garry did some. His acting coach, Roy London, did some. Michael Lehman, the great director, did a bunch, and Tommy Schlamme did a few, but did the first one, and I think designed how the show would look.
Right.
But it was the biggest break for me, because it broke my terror about directing.
Yeah.
And then he came down to set and helped me. I mean, he was there for most of it. There's an argument to be made that I didn't even direct that episode, when you really get down to it. It may have just been me listening to Garry.
As we were talking about before we started, now after watching this doc, and I'm sure I can't be the only one. You want to go back and watch the Larry Sanders show again.
And it's streaming on HBO, and it really holds up.
Yeah, and that you credited him as well for. I mean, it took you you were saying for like stand-up, but also probably for your career as a writer, director of film, that it took you a long time, 10 years is what you said, to figure out how to process your life experiences and then turn them into stories, and you owe that to him.
Sure, because I never thought about where stories came from. I was a kid and I loved comedy and I loved stand-up, but I didn't really make the connection about how Barry Levinson would lead this life as a young person and turn it into Diner. And the movies that I loved so much that were personal, I didn't watch them thinking about how they were created. I was just trying to write jokes. I just wanted to be Seinfeld. So Garry was the first person, when I worked at the Larry Sanders Show, where I saw that, he got into this funny little tense thing with Dana Carvey, because Dana Carvey did a impression of him on Saturday Night Live that Garry thought was kind of mean, that how Garry dealt with it was to call Dana Carvey and say, let's do an episode of the Larry Sanders Show about how I think your impression is mean.
Yeah.
And that he would immediately take life experience and turn it into stories and art.
Yeah.
And then I thought, is my life interesting? Is there anything that people would like about my experiences? And it took me a long time to believe that if I wrote about things that were personal to me, that anyone would care.
And that was probably important when you return to stand-up too.
Sure.
It's just that belief that what you have to say, what your voice is, is of interest.
Yeah, and that's a hard one for me. And I love doing stand-up, but there's definitely a voice in my head that's like, shut up.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. It's very hard to be
Sure.
arrogant enough to think you can hold a stage and just say, this is what I think about, what happened today.
Yeah.
But I've gotten better and have enjoyed it more. But that's a tough voice.
Yeah. There's a fair amount of material in your stand-up special about your daughters.
Yes, yes.
How much, and that was interesting. I mean, and as in your stand-up special, you show yourself as the dad bod icon.
Exactly. I really was.
Which I Googled after
I
the special, after watching it. If you Google Judd Apatow dad bod, you'll get
You'll get a long article.
So, it is so funny. There were two things I Googled after your stand-up special, that and the first pitch at the Mets game.
Everything humiliating to me, you did a Google search on.
Well, it was funny because the first pitch wasn't quite as bad in some respects.
It went straight.
Yeah.
That's key, because when you throw out a first pitch, your first fear is that it just goes, whew!
Right.
But mine did go straight, and people said you have to throw it higher than you think because you're on the mound.
The launch angle is incredible on it.
Yeah, but I threw it, and it just didn't make it to the plate. But I'm very proud of the straightness.
Mm-hmm. If you go on MLB.com, the
Yes.
Major League Baseball site,
Yes.
they have your first pitch archived for all of eternity.
You didn't need to tell people this. Although, do you know what?
MLB.com.
But you know that Topps made a baseball card of me that came with real baseball cards. It was like a first pitch baseball card, like of me about to throw.
That's awesome.
And I look badass, and it doesn't have a card which shows what happened, which was blah. Like that, they didn't have that.
Well, if you watch the video, the video is taken from the angle of the catcher. So you never really, you see the straightness,
Yes.
but you never see how far the ball went. It's perfect.
I can lie to
So you
people
see
and tell
now.
them that I threw it all the way.
But where I was going, I guess, with the stand-up and the daughters and the dad bod, was I was wondering how much of your identity has been tied up these past 20 years as a father.
Well, that's the most important thing of all, and it's what consumes any dad is, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Am I screwing this up? And you don't know if you're screwing it up, because sometimes what you think is a bad moment is a lesson they're learning that will make them stronger later, because we all want our kids to be happy every second of the day. But the truth is, I succeeded because of all the terrible things that happened that made me want to get a job and be strong and figure out how to survive. So I'm constantly confused about how I'm doing as a parent, and so that's why I talk about it.
Yeah.
And my kids are, they're really funny and smart and challenge me on everything. My daughter the other day had a new variation of a thing she likes to say to me, which is she puts the music on in the car when we drive to school, and her new thing is she says, I hate it when you talk over my music, which basically means if I put on music, shut up. Mm-hmm. And that's our relationship.
See,
Then I'm quiet. Then I'm terrified to speak.
well, you're there to listen,
Yeah.
but now you're really there to listen to her music. And maybe you can have a conversation about the music when the music's not playing.
Well, the music's always playing. That's her game. But also, I try to slip in things and ask questions. I will just go like, "Do you have anything fun happening today?" And she's like, "Good." I'm like, "Sorry." So I can't ask her anything. But I love exploring all that stuff. It's really fun. My kids are generally okay with it. One watched the special and one didn't.
Mm-hmm. The older
my
Iris?
older daughter has not watched the special yet. They've seen all the jokes.
Yeah.
Iris watched it with her friends one night, without telling me, and I went to pick her up from a sleepover where they watched the special. Ooh. And I went, "How'd it go?" And she's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Did you guys? Did you like it?" She's like, "It was good." I'm like, "Did your friends like it?" "Yeah." That's all I got. That's the feedback.
That's kind of like the, she's 15. That's pretty much the adolescent range of feedback that you get about your own work or whatever. Yeah, that you got that is pretty amazing.
The lack of interest is fantastic. It's a startling lack of interest. Like, I have to beg them to watch anything that I've done. My older daughter, Maud, is one of the stars of a movie I did called Funny People. And one of the things she's most proud of in life is that she's never watched it. And I'll say, "Hey, why don't you watch it tonight?" And she's like, "Yeah, maybe." And it's like her running joke that she's never watched it.
Yeah, but I think for any parent of teenagers watching this, it's not far out of the range of just normal experience.
We're all schmucks.
But what's that going to be like when Iris is out of the house? And that,
what is life going to be like?
Yeah. Is that putting a little fear, or?
Leslie and I are the type of couple that moves down the street. We're like Everybody Loves Raymond. Like, we're definitely the couple that says where you want to live, and we just start looking for real estate.
Yeah.
So my daughter said she was considering going to college in Manhattan, and so years in advance, we got a place in Manhattan to assume we would just get near her, and then she didn't go there. So she outsmarted us.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're ever going to be empty nesters. I think we're going to move in their nest. That's
You're going
plan.
To track them down, and
yes.
Let's see. We have some questions.
Okay. Did I win any Emmys yet?
Not yet.
How many? What did I win for yet?
Erica Sanchez wants to know, and there are 3 question marks with this.
Oh boy.
This is the kind of, when I put 3 question marks with my kids, it's like, when will you be home? Question mark.
There's rage in the question.
No, there's a real, she wants to really know, when will you be doing a new movie?
This is a very good question.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath.
You did an interview last year where you just came out and said, have nothing.
Yeah. I have less now. I have less now. I have less
okay.
now. But
not true. That's not true. I saw, unless maybe it is, because I saw an interview with you not long ago where you said you were writing a movie.
Well, I am. I'm always writing, and the funny thing about a movie is you can figure it out in a second. I could drive home, and suddenly I can see the arc, and I might figure out the ending in the last few beats. It happens in 1 second. So for me, I just always want to do things that I think have the potential to be very strong. So if I can get a movie made, it doesn't mean I'll make a movie. We waited years before we started making Bridesmaids because we just wanted to make sure it would be fantastic. So I'm very tough on heading into production. I never think, we'll figure it out when we get there. I want to make sure that we're rocking. So I have a couple ideas. So you never know.
Okay.
You never know.
Okay.
Anything can happen.
Carmen wants to know, any chance of a Love spinoff with the supporting cast? We all miss Birdie.
Yes, a lot of people have asked about that, and I have not received a call from Netflix yet. But we're very happy that people have loved how we finished Love. We did 3 seasons, and
which felt right.
It did. Here's the funny thing about TV is that people always consider a success that you have been on Gunsmoke length amount of time. But the truth is, not every show is supposed to have like 9 billion episodes, and we wanted to show people from the second they met till, an important turn, let's say. I don't want to give it away because some people haven't watched it. In their relationship. And it is the kind of relationship if somebody in 3 years at Netflix said, you want to do, another couple of years of it, we certainly could. And that might be fun. But definitely there's a beginning, middle, and end. So now when people watch our 34 episodes, it really does feel like a finished miniseries. And people have really liked how we ended it. With Freaks and Geeks, we always knew they were going to cancel us. So we did design it like a miniseries with an ending because we thought there's no way we're getting a second season. And in some way, the reason why people love it is because there's not 5 seasons where the last 2 were bad and everyone was 6'4" and all the goofy kids were gorgeous now. And I feel that way about Love, that the idea that we knew we were going to end it at this moment allowed us to tell a proper story and do it the way we really wanted to do it.
Yeah, that's a show, Freaks and Geeks, that I imagine, my daughter has seen it. Yeah. All of her friends has seen it because of Netflix. Well, it's just incredible, the second life it's had. Well,
what's fascinating is when things hit Netflix, it's like they're coming out for the first time. Mm-hmm. So way more people watch Freaks and Geeks on Netflix than NBC, I would assume, at this point. And I try to pretend I just made it. Like in my head, I just, if anything hits, like someone said, the 40-Year-Old Virgin is going to be on Netflix this May for the first time. I know millions and millions of people will watch that movie for the first time. So in my head, I go, I just finished 40-Year-Old Virgin, and then I have the satisfaction of having completed something when in fact, I'm just home alone watching Wild Wild Country.
Yeah, or an episode of Gunsmoke.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, we have a lightning round.
Oh boy.
What was the last show that you binge watched?
I binge watched, was it that show, I'm going to get the amount of seconds wrong, was that show 6 Seconds?
Yeah, see, I haven't
Was it
watched
called
that.
7 Seconds or 6 Seconds?
One of those.
I think it was 6 Seconds, which was excellent. That was a good show. And what did I watch? Because sometimes we get 2 in and then we debate, my wife and I, whether or not to finish. And I'm furious at her. No, it's because she doesn't like it.
Oh.
And so she'll get 2 in and go like, yeah, I can't do it. And I'm like, we got to finish it because I'm a finisher. Mm-hmm. Even if I dislike it, I lean finishing. And sometimes I'll bail, but she's a quick bail. 15 minutes in, she could be like, this isn't happening. And I'm like, this is like everyone in the world's favorite show. Are we not going to be a part of this? She's like, yeah, we're done. And that's tough for me.
But see, I kind of now have, some faith about your marriage because you're watching together. A lot of couples don't.
We do. We're mainly watching, crime shows, real life crime shows.
There's a lot to choose from.
And we're so happy about it. Oh, but the last thing we binge watched was the Vanity Fair Confidential. See, you don't know this, but we know a whole world of shows about crimes that you don't know about.
If you could go back and be on any TV show.
Oh, like as a writer?
Well, yeah, I guess so.
As a star?
Yeah. We don't have too many behind the scenes people. So usually this is a question asked of actors, but you've...
What writer's room would I want to be in?
What writer's room would you want to be?
I think it would have been very exciting to be in the writer's room for All in the Family because there were some great minds there, and those were like little plays, and when you rewatch them, they're very emotional. They get really funny, but also intense. That sounds like it would be fun, and I think we all wish we could have written for one of Sid Caesar's shows, just to be in the same room as Mel Brooks for a long period of time, and Larry Gelbart and people like that.
Yeah. A lot of people watch TV to unwind. What do you do to unwind?
Podcast. I switch it to podcasts. Podcasts about TV. No, I like to listen to podcasts. Like every night, I put on Lawrence O'Donnell or Rachel Maddow or something like that, and I find out everything that happened that day, and then I'm so stressed and angry, and then I just pass out. Like I go from peak rage, and then it's like my body just like shuts me down, and I do that most nights.
So that's better than any kind of sleeping. That's your sleeping aid. That's what gets you.
I also have, a lot of apps on the phone where, Scottish guys talk me to sleep to new age music. This is Glenn Harrod. You are listening to the sleeping, and then I know I'm passed out.
Is there like the sound of sheep in the background?
There's always sounds of sheep. That's essential for me.
What do you know now that you wish you knew on your first, writing job?
What do I know now? What's funny is my first writing job for television, for series television, I co-created the Ben Stiller Show with Ben, and we were canceled. We made 13. I don't even know if they aired the number 13. And then 6 or 7 months later, we won the Emmy for Best Variety Writing, which is very exciting. No one saw that coming, especially us. But I have not won an Emmy since. I've lost every time since 1993. And I have to say, the only reason why I'm okay with it is I look at the old Emmy, and you've been in the business a long time, when the Emmy is decomposing. Yeah. It's literally falling apart. Like, it doesn't look shiny. All the shine is gone.
It's tarnished.
It's like you polished it with the wrong stuff.
Globe or whatever it is.
It gets sad. It gets very sad.
Well, since you've been here today, maybe we'll be seeing you at this year's show. I think you've been nominated since this conversation.
I think I just won an Emmy for The Crown by being here, and I don't even work for The Crown, but they're going to give me one. That's how effective this is.
Thanks for stopping by, buddy.
My pleasure.
All right. For more of these Emmy conversations, you can go to latimes.com. Thanks for watching.